Hi, it's Jackie. I haven't done a live video in quite a while, so I'm just going to get things organized here and hopefully so you can see what I'm going to be doing today. Um, what we're going to be doing today is painting this as a live demo. So if you can paint with me, that would be great, or you can just watch along and come back and paint this later. The video will be here on my Facebook page as well as in my Facebook group called Mini Painting Tutorials with Jacqueline Penner, and you can view it again later. So I'm just going to check if everything is working here. Okay, so it's showing me sideways. Looks like I'm gonna have to turn my phone. Just one moment here. Okay. Hi, Sharon. Alrighty. I'm just going to show you what I'm going to be using today. So this is what we're going to be painting, a peony, and it's quite small. I've done it here about 6 by 6 inches, but you can make it whatever size you want. And I'm using acrylic today. I'll just show you here what I'm going to be using. So the colors I have today are my favorites that I use all the time. And that would be ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow dark, or a similar yellow would work just fine. Just one moment. Okay, and quinacridone magenta. So it's a bright, bright pink. And if you didn't have this, you could use a red as well. So we have the 3 primary colors, essentially, a blue, a red, and a yellow. And I'm also going to be using Payne's gray. So that's this one. It's a dark blue. It's kind of like navy blue, really. Okay, I also use, almost every time I paint, I use matte medium, and this could be also a gloss medium. And there's lots of different brands. It's just made up of the polymers that you put in acrylic paint without any color, so it's clear, and it thins out your paint and allows you to add flow to your paint so that it doesn't dry out as fast, and it also blends better and can make your paint transparent if you need it to be transparent. Then I'm going to be using a white, of course. This is Artist Loft white. I use this a lot. And then sometimes when I need a heavy hitter of white, then I use a really good quality titanium white. And so I have that here as well. This is a golden titanium white, and those are both titanium white, but there's a difference. The other brands, let's just say if you pay a little less for your white, it's not going to be as opaque. So that's why I would use this. Sometimes you need something that's going to be a real bright white at the end of your painting. Okay. And we're going to be using just some standard brushes today. I like to have an assortment of brushes depending on what I feel like using. But this is likely what I will mostly be using today, which is just a flat brush. This one has been well used. It's kind of skinny if you turn it sideways, but it's like a square on the end. And just a round paintbrush that comes to a bit of a point. Yeah, it's a little better when it's wet, but That's what I like to use. And then I like to have an assortment of also square brushes and brushes like this that are called filbert. So it's like a square brush. It's also skinny on one side, but it's rounded, so it doesn't have any corners. So that's also one of my favorites. Okay, and we need something to paint on, which is, I'm going to be using an MDF panel today. I had my husband cut me some of these, and this is what it looks like before it's painted. But you can use anything, a canvas or even a thick piece of paper with some gesso on it. So that's what the white background is here. I have gesso on this that is like a primer. And then I applied my line drawing already. So you just draw out what you're going to paint in a simple way. This is what I use to put my drawing on. This is my drawing. Okay, so I like to make my drawing on paper and then I transfer it to my surface that I'm going to be painting on. Whether I'm doing watercolor or acrylic, that's just something that I got in the habit of doing that works well for me. So I have a line drawing, I put it on my panel, and then I paint it over the lines, which is sometimes I do that to cover up the lines, which is what I did here with this bright teal color because it's an opaque color. But sometimes I don't mind the pencil lines showing through, so I don't paint them over. So that's your choice, you know. If you really don't want them to show later, then at the beginning you can paint over them with a skinny paintbrush. So I did this in this case, but when I did the demo painting yesterday, I didn't. Yeah, so that's what I've got going here, as well as a little bit of shadowing that I started to do. And I'll just show you this one more time up close. So this is what we're going to paint today. And that started out just the same as that one, with a line drawing. And we're going to start by putting in some of the shadows. And I'm just going to move my camera now so we can get it all in view here. And you can hopefully have a view of, hopefully, my palette and the reference photo that I used here. Okay. Well, welcome everyone here that's watching. I see we have a few people watching already. Okay. I thought I might be able to do a wider camera angle than I am doing here, but let's see if I can make this work. Okay, so if we paint like this, hopefully you can see, here's my palette. So it's nice and messy, but what I have in here is my yellow, my quinacridone magenta. I have two blues, but I'm going to use this ultramarine blue today here. My white, and now I'm dripping out my medium that I just put in my palette. But that's right here. It looks like white paint, but it dries clear. Okay. And then I have a bit of my teal right here, this cobalt teal. Maybe I didn't show you that one. So that's this right here. It's a really pretty color. I like that color. Okay, so that gives you a pretty good idea of what we need, and let's get going here. So at this stage of my painting, I do put in the shadows. So I think of that as putting in the darks. And I just want to show you my reference image here. So that's the photo that I painted from when I painted this, if you can see everything there. So this is a photo that I had that I edited. It was actually a great big bouquet, and I just zoomed in on one of the flowers, and that's what we're going to be painting today. So I don't know if I can get this all in the screen at once here because I wasn't real organized with that. Sometimes I paint where you're looking down at my desk. Oh, that might work if I put it here. Okay. But I thought I'd try doing it on the easel today. Alrighty, so what I'm going to start with for doing my shadows is I already put in some. So right here where this blue is, I used Payne's gray. Might need a fresh bit of paint here. So that's what Payne's gray looks like. It's like navy blue. And then I picked up some of my matte medium and a little bit of water, and I'm mixing that together. Not too much water, but enough that it makes your paint transparent. Okay, so now I'm looking on my photo here to see where are the dark areas, and there aren't a lot of darks in this flower, but obviously mostly on the leaves. So I put in a soft bit of darkness already everywhere here, and now I'm going to go with another layer, and I'm going to make it just a bit darker than I did the first time, and just reinforce the areas for myself where it's going to be the darkest. So I'm just using my flat brush and putting that in there. Okay, and what this is doing is I'm not aiming to get the end color yet. I'm actually just aiming to put in a map of where the darks are. So this happens to be a very similar color to the end result here, but it's not that important yet because we're going to paint over this all so far. So, but I'm just putting in these darks here. Okay, and that has most of them. I guess I could put in a little more right here. And I'm not really worried if I paint out of the lines at this point. I mean, I'm not worrying about that. I'm just putting in some loose brush strokes. And getting in the darkest shapes. Okay. Now acrylic dries pretty fast. I have a big bucket of water here too, so I'm washing out my brush and then I dab it off on my paper towel. Okay, now the next part I'm going to move on to is I'm not thinking of the lightest areas here. I'm thinking of the darker or middle tones, so mid-dark areas in this flower now. And I'm going to put that in. So I have my quinacridone magenta. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of my matte medium because it is already transparent, but I want to just lighten it up a little bit. And I'm putting in some transparent layers here. So everywhere in the flower that it looks kind of medium darkness now. So I did my darkest darks. Now I'm putting in the next group of darks. And I'm just going to take this color by itself and get a touch of water on my brush too to make sure my paint moves. And start putting in some of those. And I can paint right over top of these shadows that I already put in here. No, it doesn't look wonderful right in the beginning. It takes a while as you paint for the painting to build up. So I've got lots of just pink going in here now, and I want to vary my color a bit. I don't want to use all the same color all over. So now I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to the mixture I already had going. So that starts to make it a little towards the orangey side. I'm going to put in a few of those brush marks, and I'm still working really transparent. I like to do that in the beginning because it brings a vibrancy to the painting that you wouldn't have if you just put everything opaque right from the start. Okay, and let's get some more paint in there so it's a little darker. And I'm going to keep picking up little bits of yellow and pink, and maybe even put a little blue in there to start getting in some purples, and keep going over some of these spots. So now I've got, I'm still using my yellow and my magenta, but now I've got almost a red. It's a darker orange. So that looks nice in contrast with the pink. And I'm not covering over everything I already put in, you know. Every layer I do leaves a bit peeking out of what I put in before, even though I am layering over some of the same areas. So I've got a pretty good start on some of those mid-tone areas. Most of them are in there. While I've got that color, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit with some water and some matte medium. And I'm going to fill this in all over my background because I want this color to peek through my background when I'm done. It's just going to look nice because I know I'm going to make a teal or a light teal background. And so I'm just going to put this in here to cover up the white. And I'm going to maybe add just a bit more yellow. If anyone has any questions, you can type them in the comments. I might see it now, or I will answer it for you later. And you can add a little white to your paint at this stage if you want. I think I will, just to give it a little bit more variation. Because even though it's a background, I'm not going to make the background completely solid, the same color everywhere. You see how this background has a little dark right here and a little dark here. And you know, it's a little lighter blue around the edges. So that's nice to have some variation with it. So I've got kind of a coral color now, which will look really nice with the teal. Need a little more paint, so I'll just mix up some more and a little white. So if anyone isn't aware, I have a Facebook group attached to my art page. So my art page is Jacqueline Penner Art, and then attached to that, if you go and look under groups, I have a group called Mini Painting Tutorials for Beginners, or it's actually called Mini Painting Tutorials with Jacqueline Penner, and it is for beginners and intermediate, I would say. And yeah, so go join there if you haven't already. Also, you want to get on my mailing list if you're at all interested in new classes or online classes that I have coming up, because that's where you will get the freshest information about what I'm doing, which is on my email list. So at the top of Jacqueline Penner Art Facebook page, you can join. There's a spot to click that says join Jackie's mailing list. You can do it there. And I will put a link at the bottom of this video as well where you can join. So that'll do for what we're going to put in as the background right now. And I know this looks maybe a little bit like we're not going towards this yet because we have to remember what we're doing here is the underlayer. Okay, so by putting in the dark spots, I'm making myself a map of where I'm going to have the darks, and I've also left out the white areas right now where are going to be the lightest lights, and everywhere I have these pink colors are my middle tones, so my middle values including the background. And now we're going to do something to mark out our lightest lights, and that's, I'm going to wash my paintbrush out, and I don't always do this step, but I do recommend it if you're not real familiar with painting, because you're just making a map for yourself. You're telling yourself where your whites are going to be, or your lightest lights. So I have some white paint here and some medium to make it a little thinner, and a tiny touch of yellow. You probably can't see what I'm doing there. So just like a tiny bit of yellow on the corner of my brush and putting it into my white. And so now I have like a warm white color. It's up to you how much yellow you want to put, but like this is what I now have. So now I'm just going to, and there is a bit of yellow in this painting too, so that's good. So I'm just going to put in these areas that are the lightest in the painting. So this is just giving these areas the first coat of paint. So there's a little bit of an edge around this flower. My paint's getting a little dry, so I'm just going to add a little bit of water. There's a little bit here. So just put those areas in. This is going to be a pink area, but it is still quite light, so I'm going to mark that in with this yellowish color too. And you may be wondering, what about this teal color where I put on all my lines? That is totally up to you whether you want to leave some of it showing or you want to paint over it all. I'm going to do some of it will be showing, but I'm definitely painting over some of it too. And as I keep going, I would probably paint over most of it by the time I'm done. But where are we at? 11:30 here. I'm going to try and finish this in under an hour, so hopefully I can. Okay, where else? Yeah, a little bit right here. So this is just telling me now, okay, watch out. These are the areas that are supposed to be the lightest by the time you're done this painting. So now we have marked out the darks, the lights, and the medium tones, and we have our underpainting in. And at this point, what I aim for is, you know, my whole painting surface to be having at least one layer of paint on it, as well as my drawing is there, my value map is there, being all the colors that the lights, the darks, and the medium tones. And it looks bright at this stage because it's going to get less bright in some areas as we go along and we add whites and light tones. So, oh, I didn't put anything on the stem here. Let's just put a little green. So we'll grab a little yellow and a little ultramarine blue. Still a pretty yellowish green, and put that in there just on that little bit of stem. Okay, now I don't have any paint here. That's actually supposed to be pink-ish, so I'm going to put in a few more corally pink spots here where I might have missed. Okay, now we're going to switch gears and start thinking a little bit more in terms of what actual colors are in my reference photo and what I'm going to make those colors to be, as well as the background. So I'm going to go with these dark areas in the leaves first and put some Payne's gray and a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of water, and at this point now I'm not necessarily making things transparent anymore. It's going to be less transparent, but still I like to paint with layers of transparent colors, and so I probably will still have some, but as I get toward the end of the painting in this last second last layer, probably it will be less transparent. So also, don't paint over everything. You know, every layer looks nice if you leave something from the layer before showing through. You know, we're not painting a wall where you have to paint every square inch and it all looks the same. A painting is so much more interesting if it's not all flat and all the same. So, for example, here, right here where I just painted in this layer of this dark navy blue, I still left a little line of that bright teal and a little bit of layer of the color that was there before that isn't as dark. And I'm going to do that here too. There's kind of a little area in here that's going to be a different color. And I do want that nice dark color right under here in the middle. Okay, and I see it's pretty dark right up here, so I'll just put that in. Also right here. And right here. Okay, and right in these petals here, I see just a little bit of purple. So I'm going to put that in now too. And I'm going to use the same Payne's gray, little bit that I had on my brush, and mix a little quinacridone magenta in it. And I'm going to put a little matte medium in there. And now just add a little bit of that purple in a couple spots. Right here, it looks a little purplish. Okay, now I'm going to put in some more layers of pink and red. So picking up my magenta, and I still had some of that purple on my brush, so my magenta is kind of dark. Okay, I'm going to wash out my brush and put a little bit more red oranges in there. Good to just keep building a little bit of layers at this point. It just adds so much more vibrancy. And I like bright colors, if you never may have noticed in my work. That's what I like to do mostly. Unless I'm trying to make something look completely realistic and natural, but I don't paint that way so much anymore. I like to put in bright colors, even if they weren't there in the first place. I think that's just what I like. But you can use, of course, any colors you want, especially once you learn how to look for the values in a painting. That means if, you know, the lightness or the darkness. So once you train your eyes to see that, you can change the color to be anything you want, and your eye will still see it kind of correctly, just the same as you would if you were watching black and white TV or black and white photos. It's kind of funny how your eye can still see exactly what it needs to see without color. That's because the values are actually more important than the color. Okay, now I'm going to keep my pinky colors on my brush, and I'm going to add a little bit of matte medium and white. So this is where we switch gears from painting just in transparent colors mostly, and now we're going to add white. Every time you add white to your paint, that makes it opaque, meaning you can't see through it. So I'm putting in some pinks here now, where these lighter pinks go. And this is going to start to be the place where it takes the painting from kind of messy to looking better. And remember again, don't paint over everywhere. Keep little things showing through from each layer. And I'm putting in pinks. I'm going to keep adding little bits of pink and yellow to my white paint mixture here so that it's not always exactly the same color. Okay. I need a little more white paint. Actually, I think I'm going to go with the titanium white now. I still have my pink paint on my brush, and I picked up a little water and a little of my white paint now. And remember, sometimes it's fun to paint with two colors on your brush like this that aren't blended. You know, you can do that. So I have a little area here, right here in the middle of the flower. There's a petal that's almost the whitest, you know, it's not white, but it's the lightest area in the painting, as well as right here. So I'm going to put those in, and that sometimes takes a couple of layers, but I've got that pink on my brush and this yellow, and I'm just going to make a nice fat brush stroke like that to make it kind of blend together on the surface, which is fun. And I'm going to pick up just a little more white and do another layer. Sometimes you want to let it dry a little bit before you do another layer on top, or if you want to blend it, then do it now when it's still wet. At this point, any spots that are still showing that bright teal, you can decide now if you like it, you're going to keep it, or if you don't, you're going to paint over it now. You want to start getting that painted over if you don't want it showing anywhere. And I'm going to move to a little bit more of coral color again. So I've got all still my white and my pink I was working with, but I'm just adding a little yellow now. Get a little water if your paint starts to be kind of sticky and not want to come off your brush. Okay, and just keep going on a couple more spots like that. Okay, I have to get this finished up here. Okay, so just get in the last opaque areas, these last flower petal tips that we didn't do yet. And then I'm going to put in the background, and then we'll make any more final touches that we need to do to the flower. This little area here is poking out. So now I'm just looking for any spots that just didn't quite get painted enough. Right here's one. Okay, let's go right over to do the background now, and this is going to be a very fun part because it's going to make that whole flower just pop out. Okay, so I'm going to use my teal color here, and I'm going to mix that with some white. And I'm just going to paint my background, but I am going to pay a little bit of attention to where it might be lighter or darker in my painting photo. And I'm just going to remember not to cover up the whole coral background. So I'm just going to, leave a few spots poking out like that. But I also need just a touch of Payne's Gray in my teal mixture here. So just off to the side, I'm going to keep my teal and white mixture, and then I'm going to add a little bit of this dark blue as well, so I can put that where the background is a little bit darker. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm putting in the darker blue, and as I'm doing this, I'm paying attention to the edges of my petals. So I'm just going to mark those in like with the edge of my brush as I'm doing the background. So I'm finishing off the shape of my petals as I go around them with the background. Need a little water, and I'm picking up my lighter teal color now. And just keep mixing paint if you run out as you're going along. turn this upside down. Mixing my white and my teal here still, and painting around the edges of the petals. And I need to mix up a little bit of green just to do the stem. But we're getting pretty close to done. I'm going to keep this teal on my paintbrush and just grab a little bit of blue and some yellow. And that way I'll get a green that still goes with the colors I'm using. Okay. There's kind of a dark spot, and then I'm going to use, okay, so I added some white and some yellow to the green I already had. A bit more yellow. And I'm going to just put a stroke of that on most of the stem, but I'm still leaving a bit of the darker green I had too, and that will give a little bit of light and shadow on the stem. Okay, now I'm just going to take a quick minute to put some little last touches. Now, yeah, so at this point I'm just going to look here and see, is there anything that sticks out at me that I still don't like? Even if it doesn't look or does look the same as the picture, you know, is there anything that sticking out that I don't like, or if I do like it, I just want to make sure I keep it. But I'm just going to pick up a little more magenta, make it transparent with my medium, and I like that petal. This one could be just a little bit brighter now, so I'm just gonna make a little bit more brightness on this petal. You just want to be light-handed though, because you don't want to lose what you've already got. But I'm just adding a little bit more vibrancy in a couple spots. Right here could use another layer, and this is what it does for you when you build up the layers. Like, even if I've got an opaque area, I can still go back and make another clear transparent layer over top of it, which adds a lot of vibrancy. So now I'm adding, still got the magenta, and I added a little bit of yellow. Just gonna put in a few marks with that. This would be called glazing, which is usually done at the end of a painting if you are using a transparent paint. Okay, I think that has pretty much got it. I will just take one last bit of white, and I've still got pink in my brush, and put in a couple marks where there's the lightest whites. And I'm making pretty thick brush strokes right at the end here, just getting some last juicy paint on there that will be seen on the top layer. Well, I think that will call it done for today. Don't forget to sign your work always. I guess you might want to wait for it to dry first, but there's our finished piece. I think it does look pretty similar to the painting, or the photo that we started with. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to have to get going here, but I hope you give this a try. And if you do, I'd love to see it. Post it in the comments. Send it to me if you want to send it privately, or send it, you can post it in the Mini Painting Tutorials with Jacqueline Penner group. That's what that's for. It's for us to share our artwork with each other. So I hope you really enjoyed that. I hope you paint it. And I'd love to help you if you have any questions. Thanks so much. Have an awesome day.